Okay, 6:30, call our special meeting to order.
All right, thank you so much for being here. Hello, Jane.
Hi.
Yes, so this is an exciting time. Position number 2, our one applicant that we have this evening, we're going to be interviewing. So thank you for being here. We appreciate it. And we have a number of questions for you, that you have those questions in front of you. And so what we're going to do is the board is going to ask the questions. Each one of them has been identified, which questions they're going to ask. And at the end, then you can ask us questions.
Okay.
And just for your knowledge, I guess, if there were 5 people we were interviewing, we'd be asking exactly the same questions of each applicant, but this should be pretty easy if you want it. Yeah. Okay. So I'll start. Your application has given us a general idea about why you want to become a member of the Washougal Board of Directors. Will you please elaborate on contributions you feel you can make to the board?
Absolutely. So I've had over 20 years of corporate HR and operations experience. And so within the operations side, I've had experience with balancing budgets, which I feel like is a real challenge that the board's been faced with trying to tackle the last few years and probably into the foreseeable future. And then also in HR, which is dealing with people. And I feel like a big part of the board's role is really listening to both the parents, the administrators, and the community on what's needed, and then going about trying to find solutions that are going to be the best for the kids in the district. And being in HR, for those of you familiar with the function, I'm also used to a lot of folks with differing opinions on how things can be done, and really make an effort to try and find a win-win solution, as well as when you know some folks are going to be upset, try to proactively address what their concerns are whenever you know you're going to roll out something that they're going to feel very strongly about. And I think bringing those things could be useful.
Thank you.
All right,
Cindy?
question 2. The board's responsibility is to represent the community while making decisions that benefit all students in the district. There are times when the community's interests may be divided and those opinions may be directed towards you or the board. How do you see yourself in these kinds of situations?
Yes. So I have often been the bearer of news that people don't agree with, or maybe when something new rolls out and folks have had a strong opinion one way or the other and it doesn't go their way. I really just focus on not taking it personally and trying to diffuse situations as much as possible with facts. A lot of the times when people react strongly, it's not because they're a bad person or they're attacking you personally. It's because there's fear or concern about the decision that was made. And so I really think it's just trying to continue the dialogue in as positive of a manner as you can. And also at times recognizing that you need to stop the dialogue and take a little break and come back to the table later.
What attributes are essential for successful school board members? Can you provide examples of how you have demonstrated or developed these types of attributes?
I think one of the keys is going to be listening. I mentioned that earlier, but I think I'm not an expert on teaching or running a school, and being able to listen to those folks as well as listen to the parents and their concerns. And then the other piece that I think is really important in addition to teamwork is kind of a phrase that I've always abided by, which is strong opinions loosely held. So basically, once you've got the information and you form an opinion, because that's part of your job, but then also being willing to change that opinion if new information comes to light or if others make valid points that maybe you didn't consider. Oh, and how have I demonstrated those? I've had to do that my entire career. So a big part of my role now is I actually advise CEOs and executives on their HR policies. And a lot of those folks have very strong opinions on things. And while I might come in with opinions and data to back things up, I also need to listen to their perspective and the employee's perspective. And it has resulted in me occasionally changing the course of action on things just because other people are smarter than I am in certain areas.
Okay, so one of the important roles of the school board is to approve policy. Can you tell me how policy plays a role in the functioning of the board and how policy can be used as a vehicle for student success?
Yeah, so my understanding is that it's the board's role to create the policy as a group, and then the administration's role to help enforce it. And so in my mind, it's looking at how whichever policies we're going to create are going to impact the student body or the teachers or the administration, and thinking about both the positive and the negative as we go about trying to craft ones that work, also knowing that policy is policy and there's always going to be those one-off situations. and then looking at how we can potentially address those, or if not, what we're gonna do when those situations arise.
Say B again.
The Washougal School Director's strategic plan guides board and district decisions regarding both funding and policy. The current plan has guided us with the vision of knowing, nurturing, and challenging all of our students to rise. As we enter the final year of our current strategic plan, the board, in collaboration with the Washougal community, will be developing and adopting our next 7-year strategic plan. How would you approach the review and revision of this plan? What areas would you prioritize to ensure that our updated strategic vision effectively addresses the challenges and opportunities ahead for our district?
I don't know if I can answer the last one because of my answer to the first part.
Okay.
So I think with any strategic plan, when you're looking at the success, the first thing I'd want to look at is like, how are we measuring the success of that plan? Right? And what's the data tell us about where we've had good results and we just need to continue along that path and where we need to pivot? I do think the other piece would be, I know one of the big concerns is dropping enrollment and the impact to funding. And so I need more information about that, because I believe that's probably going to guide some decisions, whether that's trying to figure out ways to drive more enrollment or adjusting budget, and therefore all the trickle down effects of adjusting that budget and what that does to the overall strategic plan.
Can I ask a follow-up on that?
Yeah.
What metrics would you consider the most valuable for knowing whether a board and an administration is successful?
Well, I think the first one is like, what's the student success rate and how do we look at that, right? Is
Right.
that graduation rates? Is that test scores, a combination therein, but also feedback from those same students, the teachers. Those would probably be where I'd start. And then based on the specific item, if there's additional data we can dive into.
Thanks.
Board members each bring their own areas of expertise, knowledge, and experience to the board. At least we'd like to think so. Diverse ideas and opinions are welcome, but the most effective words work as a team. The Washougal Board of Directors values the respectful teamwork that has been developed over time. Do you have an experience to share that illustrates your ability to work as a member of a team? How would you respond if you disagreed with a decision that was made by the board?
So working as a team, I guess we could go into either the fact that like so I volunteer with Reed Northwest and also with coaching, and coaching softball. You get folks that have different opinions on how you should, run your practices, and these are little kids. So really with that, it's listening, hearing the concerns, sometimes adjusting or just explaining why you're not adjusting the plan. At work, it's more about leaning on each other's strengths. So there's certain areas I'm really, really strong at, and there's others that maybe adequate or subpar. So it's identifying who those folks are, they're experts in that field or really good at it, and leaning on them for that and their expertise. And I take the same as for how would you respond if you disagreed with the decision of the board? Same way I do with my teams at work. It's, hey, we have our debates, right? We keep them respectful. We each present our facts, but then once the decision's made, we all come in, because that's the only way you're going to move forward.
Okay, do you have any questions for us? Or is there something you would like to add that you'd like the board to know as they consider your application?
I have lots of questions. My first would be, I would love to hear from you what you consider to be the biggest challenge this school year that the board needs to tackle.
Money.
Money and enrollments. I think,
Yeah.
since I've been on the board, about maybe 5 years now, we've introduced new programs to try to be more attractive, and we lose enrollment to homeschooling, to campus transfers. My secret agenda, which I don't really have, but I would love to have those residents of Washougal that are in the campus district start putting their kids in our schools, and to have our schools recognized as being competitive with the campus school district, which has a great reputation according to the real estate industry. But I think budget is always going to be a challenge, and using our money as effectively as possible to educate kids to be successful. We also deal with new state policies that come in, new state laws that come in. And we won't know until they come in. All of us go to Olympia and do a little lobbying with our legislators. I guess I see the board's role as basically the buffer that separates the public with children that are being educated or paying taxes, about children that are paying taxes for our schools. We're the buffer that gets elected to be the intermediary between the community and the people who have money to dole out. And so I think that an ongoing challenge is going to be convincing our legislature, and especially convincing our legislators that they need to fulfill the state constitution and fund public education, and currently they don't. And I think that comes up in every contract negotiation, because the state pretends that they fund all of our positions, and they don't. So we pull from levy funds. They give us a cost of living adjustment on the positions they fund, but in order to operate, we have a whole bunch of positions that are funded with the levy funds instead. And that's a challenge. I'd say we have not yet been successful, although we're being more successful in convincing our state legislature that they really need to step up. And a big example this year was just utility costs and inflation, not built into any budget, have to keep the lights on. That took money that could have been used for more student contact or a lot of other functions, let's say, that we are strapped to fund. So I think that's my opinion. I'd like to hear from everyone, actually. It's a good question.
Yeah, I think the budget ends up taking, a lot of focus, but I think for me also, you can't keep your eye off the student success, because that's ultimately the bottom line. And so trying to balance, these budget needs while also understanding, I talk about adult problems, right, versus what you're really here to do. And coming out of COVID, I think there's a lot of issues that the administration and the staff have been really proactive about addressing, and we've been making really positive progress. So just making sure we stay, in my mind, making sure we're staying on a positive trajectory and not letting our eyes off of that. So it's not really a problem. It's just for me, just understanding that we need to not let that slip. Yes.
Yeah, I agree with you 100% on that. I kind of feel like we do focus on the one thing that's the budget. Obviously, we have to have money. We have to, that's what pays for everything, but we also need to make sure that we don't lose track of other things, because we have got so much traction on student success and behaviors and academics, but we have so much more that we need to do with there. So I agree with Ed on that, and continue to watch that too.
Any other questions that you?
Big deal. So kind of a twofold question. Thinking back to when you first joined the board, what advice would you give somebody, one, to help them get up to speed on everything? Because I've gone through some of the agenda items and watched something, but there's a lot. And so is there any way, what would you recommend to get up to speed as quickly as possible? And is there anything you did or didn't do in your first year that you'd either recommend or recommend not doing?
I would definitely you take the courses that are given. I think when we're onboarding, I think is what it's called.
Yeah.
Make sure you read the policies and especially as you don't want to be blindsided once they're here, because you're not going to know what's going on. So you want to make sure, always go ahead and read the agenda ahead. I highly recommend that, because sometimes, you just don't want to be blindsided when you're up here. And just know it takes time. It took me a year to really be able to feel more confident, and just, sitting up here and having parents, come to you in a safe way. Hey, I know you, so it takes time. You just have to be comfortable with that, and be okay with not knowing everything right away.
Our state organization that called WASNA, the Washington State School District
School Directors
Directors
Association.
Association has an annual meeting in November. They have a boot camp for new board members. I found that very valuable, particularly with many of the idiosyncrasies of the budget. In terms of where funding comes from, just a good overview of that. And I thought, they focus on policy, not administration. I think a lot of members of the community think the school board is running the schools. We hire a superintendent and we approve a budget that's developed by Aaron's staff, for the superintendent's staff, this would be Aaron. And we hire superintendents, and that's kind of most of what we do. If I could change one thing in my tenure on here, I would move to a planet that didn't experience COVID, because it was a real challenge. And it brought out the best and the worst in our community.
Yeah, I would second what he said about getting involved with our state organization, because they have a lot of tools learning about roles and responsibilities, because it's a delicate balance between the board and the superintendent and the superintendent's staff. So that's an opportunity.
And I just got sworn in December, so I have almost no advice. It's just,
So you would speak with the most expertise.
Yeah. I mean, you just ask lots of questions, right? I mean, and I did not volunteer a lot in the schools, and so I feel like my learning curve is a little more. But there's no dumb question, right? I mean,
One you don't ask.
right.
Yep.
So I just feel like this is a really great group, and I trust them with my vulnerabilities. So asking questions of,
Asking questions
The
ahead of
staff.
time too.
yeah,
I mean, we get a packet of agenda documents usually Friday. Is that right, Corey? Friday.
Nice.
The last time it was a nearly impenetrable 500-page novel, which I didn't open until Sunday night. So I think checking that out Friday night to see if you have homework to do over the weekend or not is a good call. And then taking that Monday after you've seen all of that to talk to the superintendent and the district staff to answer some questions that might invoke volatility in the community or something. And we've been criticized by always reaching a consensus and agreeing with each other, but I think that's mostly because we've been asking questions ahead of the meeting. So if questions are answered, they are no longer questions. But I think that's something I would advise, is to, if you see something you don't understand, call the superintendent and ask. And no one knows the answers to everything, but my experience has been with the second superintendent, always willing to find the answer and able to find the answer.
Thank you. I asked one more of you.
Yeah.
Was there anything that surprised you or that you didn't expect since you joined? Since you're.
I don't think anything really surprised me. I think just understanding how a school district operates, because I work in the federal government on budgets, and the state government budget is a little different. So I'm almost having to relearn how that works. And then also how a district functions. That's all new to me, just like the day-to-day operations of who does what. So yeah, I don't think anything really surprised me. I think everything has just been new. So you just have to take it in stride, at least for me.
Thank you.
Starting last year, we started doing listening tours in the community. Those have been very effective. I think one of the frustrations that the community vents on us up here behind these on the days or whatever it's called is that public comment is a very structured and formal way to listen to public comment. And we are not allowed to directly respond or get engaged in a argument, let alone fisticuffs, as happens other places around the country. And I really appreciate that formality, but it left a gap in having conversations with the community. And so those listening tours have been very effective. The other thing that started a few years ago, that Tracy's been involved in, are site visits to each of our schools. So the board is in the classroom. It's kind of a dog, no offense, kind of a dog and pony show, because the classrooms we visit are selected and the teachers are selected, and they're all great. And I'm sure they all are. But I found that really valuable to see what's happening in the school classroom. And you, with your volunteer experience, you may have had that experience.
Yeah.
I never had that experience. So that's been valuable to me.
I did not realize what it took to contain a classroom of 27 second graders. And
Yeah,
what was
no
going
kidding.
in there.
No kidding.
Level of appreciation.
Yes,
Right.
and hopefully together we're able to come up with some new initiatives that'll push us up another level too. I think the TK is implementation of the TK program, and if we can expand that to be more inclusive of all kids in the community, is valuable. I'm just going to give you my philosophical rant for 1.5 minutes. There's a lot of emphasis on the parental rights movement. There's a new state law on parental rights. And what is missing from that is the counterbalancing aspect of parental responsibility. And that's something that some families don't want to hear. And there's a kind of a funny cartoon. My wife was an educator of when we grew up. So I'm almost 70. And the parents come into the office, and there's a principal sitting there, and the teacher and the parents, and they're talking to Johnny. And fast forward 40 or 50 years, and the principal, the teacher, and the parents, and Johnny and the parents are, pointing at the principal and the teachers as the solution to what often is a family value problem. I shouldn't say problem, a difference in values, or some, behavioral issue that I think in today's world, parents expect the schools to take care of. And when I grew up, my parents were expected to take care of that. That's just a change in our culture. Thanks for listening to that little rant. Any other questions?
Any other questions that you didn't get answered that you wanted to know about me that weren't on the list? Are you allowed to deviate? I don't know.
Well, since you're the only one, we can ask you the exact same question as every candidate.
Like,
How old are your kids?
7 and 8, soon to be 9. So they're in 2nd and 3rd grade. Yep.
And are they happy with?
We love Cape.
That's great.
We've been really happy. My youngest actually got to start in the preschool program. It wasn't TK. I think you could just elect to send them. And it was cool because she was right next door to her brother in kindergarten. And yeah, we're very, very happy with it.
a trivial question. What's a fractional head of people?
So you know what a chief human resource officer is?
It's been there.
Yeah, so you're head of people. Well, for startups, so I work mainly with like biotech and clean energy, so mission-driven companies. When they're starting out, they're not big enough and their budget's not big enough that they can actually afford a full-time one. So I'll have 2 or 3 companies that are about 30 people each that I'm actually their head of people, but they don't get all my time. They get X amount of time each week. So it's kind of fun.
Fascinating.
Yeah, local companies are all over the.
No, they're actually East Coast and down in the Bay mostly. That
Okay.
seems to be where biotech and the hubs are. There's not too much up here yet.
Yeah, there's one.
Yeah.
Any
I
questions?
got nothing else. Thank you for answering our questions.
Yeah, thanks.
Thank you.
Thanks for applying.
Can I move out of the hot seat?
Yes, you can.
Yes, you can. We are
Yeah.
going
Don't like sitting
to.
there.
I mean,
Why all of us stare at you?
Yeah, we're going to recess to an executive session and take care of some legal business and also make a decision, which.
We'll be.
Yeah, so if you are able to stick around for a little bit,
Okay.
yeah, that'd be great. And we
Thanks.
will be back shortly.
we're returning from executive session. And after great deliberation, I'll
Yeah,
ask for a motion.
it took a long time for us to deliberate. But we kept flipping a coin and having to check our answers. I move that we appoint Jane to position number 2 on the school board.
Second.
Okay, roll call vote. Sadie,
I,
Chuck,
Aye.
Ida,
Aye.
aye.
Welcome.
Unanimous.
Congratulations and thank you very much. Yeah. So the swearing in will be at our next board meeting, next
This coming Tuesday.
Tuesday, the 10th, yeah. And look forward to having you join us.
All right.
So that's it for the agenda. Concludes our meeting. Do I need to motion to adjourn? Okay. I heard one.
Second?
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.